Hey guys, I hope you're all well. By the way, I hope you like the lighting is better in this video. I know that the lighting hasn't been good in like previous videos, so I hope it's better today. But so I thought I'd make this video for A-level OCR English Literature because I was thinking that this video is meant to give you like a breakdown of the whole like specification like of the exams and the courseworks. So in this video I'm going to talk about like what the exams consist of, what the coursework consists of, what the questions are, the timings, the marks, and what's like AO's assessment objectives you need for each question. So I'm gonna get right into it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Like I've put a lot of effort into this. Like I knew it all already, but especially for the coursework, I double checked everything on the OCR website. I spent like an hour like just double checking like everything was right and I did English literature A level. Like for example, I did like were all my Gothic flashcards just for one paper. So I hope that this will be helpful because I know it can often get confusing because you're studying eight texts and you don't know which paper's asking for what. So I thought this would be helpful. Oh yeah, before I start, so I'm gonna be referencing AOs throughout this video, so like assessment objectives. And if you study English literature, you'll know what they are. But so for OCR, there are 5 AOs. AO1 is about your understanding of the text, and also about how you portray your understanding. So your use of terminology, your use of spelling, punctuation, and grammar, and basically how you write your essays. But mostly it's about your knowledge of the text that you're writing about. AO2 is about the analysis of language, structure, and form, and how the writer uses that, or playwright or poet uses that to shape what they're trying to say. AO3 is context, and this is not just historical context, but this can also be social context and literary context. And this is not about just recalling like what was going on at the time, but also about relating how it has impacted the book, the text, and how this can be seen in the text, and why the writer slash playwright slash poet has portrayed things in a certain way in due to the context. AO4 is comparison between two or more texts and explaining how the writers or poets or playwrights portrayed their own views, and how you can see the similarities and differences. And AO5, so AO5 I think is usually the one that's the most difficult to explain. It was my favorite, but AO5 is alternate interpretation. So this could mean this could mean that, but in A level it's much more sophisticated. So this is different interpretations through time. So a Shakespearean audience may think this, and a modern audience may think this, but it's also through different readings. So for example, a psychological reading, a feminist reading, a historical reading, and many more. And it can also be seen through adaptations. So for example, in the 2018 production, and through the 1999 production, etc. And this can also be seen through scholars. So for example, this famous scholar, I can't think of any right now, states this. And sorry, this has been that was a bit long, but those are basically the 5 main AOs that I'm going to be talking about. And I'm going to do another video explaining them in more detail, but this video is long enough already. So A-level English literature is for OCR is made up of 2 exam papers worth 40% each, and 1 piece of coursework, but it is actually 2 pieces of coursework, and it is worth 20% in total. So I'm going to talk about the 2 papers first. they are both equal weighting, 40%, and they are both 2.5 hours, and they both have 60 marks each. And if you have 25% extra time, it should be about 3 hours 8 minutes. And if you have 50% extra time, it should be about um it should be about, I think, not 4 hours. I think it should be about 3 hours and a half. I'm not too sure, but like you'll get told beforehand. So I'm gonna start with paper one. Paper one is essentially the old paper, in the sense that the texts that you study are were generally written before or performed before the other texts that you study throughout English literature. So this is made up of 2 parts and 3 questions in total. The part A is Shakespeare, and part B is the comparative study. So so I have my laptop here so I can give example questions. Which is drama, the drama and the poetry. So for part one, you will study one of Shakespeare's plays. So one out of Hamlet, The Tempest, which I studied, Twelfth Night, Richard the First, Coriolanus. I don't know if I've pronounced that right, and Measure for Measure. Here you get 2 questions. And you do not get a choice. You have to answer both questions. They are both 15 marks, and so these will be together. So if you go through the paper, I'll have each text, and the 2 questions will be together. Question A will be a close analysis of an extract. So they'll give you an extract from some point in whatever play that you're studying. It will be roughly a page and a quarter, a page and a half, and they will ask you to do a close analysis and comment on Shakespeare's use of language and dramatic effects. For this question, so it is 15 marks, so you should be spending about 37 minutes on it. So like, for example, like 5 minutes planning, 30 minutes writing, and 2 minutes checking. It is 50, the marks, it is 75% AO2, so language and structure analysis, and 25% AO1. So this is showing not only your quality of written communication, but also your knowledge of the play. So how you can link what you're reading to your knowledge of the play, and also linking the extract to other parts of the play, and also linking it back to genre and how parts of that extract have been impacted by other parts of the play. The second question is a proposition question. So they will give you a question such as, for example, for The Tempest, they'll give you a statement like, "The lovers are the main source of hope in the play," and then they will ask you to what extent you agree using your whole knowledge of the play. This is again 15 marks, but the AOs are different. For this question, it is 50% AO1, so your knowledge of the play. So because in these questions you'll be using your knowledge of the play a lot, and then it is also 50% AO5, so different interpretation. So not just through that proposition question, you'll be using different interpretations. So for example, whilst a modern audience would believe this, a Shakespearean audience would believe differently. Or although this can be seen throughout the play, a Freudian critic reading would suggest that. And this again is about 37 minutes. Also, I think about the 2 Tempest questions. The 2 Shakespeare questions. The proposition question is usually linked to the extract in some way. So if, for example, you're trying to use quotes, you don't necessarily need to quote, but it looks very good for AO1 if you can quote, or at least quote close reference. You can use the extract for some ideas, but you should also be referring to the whole play. So that is section 1, and so that's half the paper, 20% of your A level. There's then section 2. Section 2 is when you study your drama and poetry pre 1900. So you I'm not going to read out all the text, but you read one drama piece. For example, I did The Duchess of Malfi, and one poetry piece slash collection. So, for example, I did the Merchant's Tale and Prologue by Chaucer, and here they will give you you have a choice of 6 questions. So, and these are all proposition questions. Um, for example, I can read you some. Love brings difficulties as well as pleasure. We live in a world of constant change. Foolish acts and their consequences are an important part of literature, and so on. So they are very, very broad questions. As you can see, they're not asking about specific character or specific theme in a specific text, because in this part of the paper, teachers have a choice of what text to study. So not everyone will be doing the same text. So they are very broad, but hence the choice of questions. Although there are there's an option of 6. Not all of them will relate. Not all, you won't be able to answer all of them, or you should only be answering one. But you won't. Not all of them will relate to your text. So you won't. So some of them will be stronger than others. So, for example, if they said we live in a world of constant change, but one of your texts doesn't really involve change at all, or you can't link your text at all, then you should not pick that question. These questions, so you should only pick one. It is 30 marks, and it is 30 marks, and it assesses 4 out of the 5 AOs. So AO, it will be 50% AO free. So this is very, very context heavy. And this is not just social and historical context, but also literary context. So, for example, referencing other works by the writer or other works at the time of the same genre. So, for example, if you're studying The Merchant's Tale and Prologue, you can reference other of Chaucer's tales. Then it will be 25% AO4 because so this is comparison, because you will be comparing 2 texts. And then it will be 12.5 AO1, so using your knowledge of the text and also your written communication. And then 12.5 AO3, so alternate interpretation. So there's different readings, critics' quotes, different interpretations, things like that. So this is a big question, and you should be spending about an hour and 15 minutes on it if you do not have extra time. Sorry, I'm slightly rushing now because I realized that I'm being a bit long. Let me just check that I'm not running out of battery. Okay, never mind. Then there is paper 2. So paper 2 is your thematic, thematic paper. So this one, all the questions are kind of linked. So you will study one out of these 5 themes. So American literature, 1880 to 1940. The Gothic, dystopia, women in literature, and the immigrant experience. So, for example, I did the Gothic, and we studied, and you have a list, you have a choice of text that you need to study. And how do I explain this? There will be 2 texts which schools you have to study at least one out of those 2 texts, and then there'll be further texts, a further 8 texts, and you'll have to study at you can study one of your other texts can be in there. I'm not really explaining well, but so for example, for Gothic, my school, we studied The Bloody Chamber and Dracula, and both of these were like the two texts that you have to study at least one of them, and then other texts, for example, included The Picture of Dorian Gray. But then so going in, so here all the questions will be together. So like all the Gothic questions will be together. Here you have two 30-mark questions. So again, an hour and 15 minutes on each, roughly. The first question will be an unseen extract in the theme that you're doing. So if you're doing American literature, it will obviously come from American literature. If you're doing the Gothic, it will come from a Gothic text. If you're doing dystopia, it'll come from a dystopia text, etc. For the unseen extract, it is roughly a page, but it can be a bit longer or a bit shorter. Um, the AOs that you're going to be assessed on, is slightly different from the Tempest extract. And here you do not get a choice. You have to do the extract. Um, it will be 75% of your marks will go to AO2, so language and structure analysis. So it's very, very heavy on AO2. 12.5% of your marks will go to for AO1, so your written communication and also your use of terminology. So for example, for Gothic, terminology such as the other, or the sublime, or the liminal, like terminology that we've learned that you can use in your extract to identify certain features. And then 12.5% AO3, so which is context, and this is not necessarily historical context, because this extract can be whenever, well, not necessarily whenever, but like this extract won't be in a specific time period unless you do American literature, in which case it'll be between 1880 to 1940. But this is literary context, so referencing other Gothic texts, other texts that you've read that are in general. So, for example, for Gothic, I also read slash not didn't completely finish reading. I was going to, but exams got cancelled. I was reading The Picture of Dorian Gray, and also I was looking up the stories of Frankenstein and many other Gothic texts, including Wuthering Heights. And so you can use, but also not just other texts, but also referencing general. So, for example, in American literature, generally a lot of things were influenced by blah blah blah. In American literature, a common theme is blah blah blah, and this can be seen through the extract. In Gothic, a common theme is blah blah blah, and it can be seen through the extract. So this is 30 marks. Your next question, you will get a choice. So you have a choice of 3. However, you won't necessarily be able to do any of the 3. It depends on what text you've studied, because one of them will be general, but two of them will be specific on one text, but you'll have to reference both texts. So, for example, for American literature, the 2 compulsory texts where you have to study at least one of these are Dystopia, not American literature, on 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale, and you will have to and one of them is specific for 1984, and one of them is specific for The Handmaid's Tale, and then one of them's varied. So if you don't do The Handmaid's Tale, you can't do The Handmaid's Tale one, but so it'll become clear, but you'll have a choice of between 2 and 3 questions, and these again. This is pretty much the exact same for the section B of paper 1. This will be a comparative proposition question. So, for example, for dystopia writings is usually deeply pessimistic, and you have to use your knowledge of both texts and other texts that you've may have studied or studied independently or read or just know of. To answer that question, the ratings of the assessment objectives are the exact same. So, as part 1, so 50% AO3, and not just historical and social context, but also literary context. 12.5% AO1, so your written communication and your knowledge of the text. 15.5% or 12.5% of AO3, not AO3, what am I saying, of AO5, so alternate interpretations, and 25% of AO4, so comparison. So this is very, very similar to section B of paper 1. So that is the 2 papers out of the way. Sorry, I realized that I've been talking about too much, so I'm going to try to speedily get through the coursework. I did a lot of thorough research about the coursework, just to double check. I did a thorough research of I went through the whole OCR guide. So for the coursework, it it is 20%, and it is 20% of your A level, but don't that here's the tricky part. The marks, because it is 40 marks in total, don't align to, it doesn't really make sense. If you do the maths, you think if the other papers are 60%, and they're 40% of the 60 marks, but 40% of the A level, and the coursework is 20%, but it's 40 marks. Like it doesn't add up. They calculate it differently in when it comes to um like your overall grade. But anyway, it is 20% of your whole A level, and it is built up of two tasks. One is 15 marks, and the other one is 25 marks. Usually you do one in year 12 and one in year 13. So the first task, and also the coursework is all modern. These are the most all modern, because all texts that you'll study will have been written or performed in or after 1900, and at least one of them will have been written before or after, no, sorry, at or after 2000, so in this century. And you'll study one prose, so like a novel or novella, I think, poetry, and a drama text. So for example, I did Langston Hughes poetry, Jerusalem, and jazz. So Jerusalem being my drama, Langston Hughes poetry being my poetry, and jazz being my prose. So the first part will be on one text, and this is worth 15 marks. And this, you'll have a choice. So you'll either have to do a close analysis reading of a certain extract in the play, or no, not play, of the text, or you will have a chance to do a recreative writing option on the text. I can't really explain the recreative writing part too well, but this will essentially be, you'll have a really creative writing task, but you have to use the playwright slash author's style, and explain how you've used the style. The weightings for this question will be 66% AO2, so language and structure and form analysis, and 33% AO1, so your written communication, like the quality of it, and your knowledge of the text. The second question will be worth more. It is 25 marks, and 12.5% of your whole A level, and it will be and this one is a comparative essay, and for example, it'll be, how is X and X presented throughout this, or how is something like that. Like it'll be a question, and you have to compare two texts. What's different with this from any other question in the A-level syllabus for OCR? For this question, you use all 5 assessment objectives. That's right, AO1, AO2, AO3, AO4, and AO5, which is completely different from every other question in the text. Which is so 20% AO1, 20% AO2, 20% AO3, 20% AO4, and 20% AO5. Wording wise, you'll have roughly task 1, so the close analysis slash recreative writing, will be 1,000 words, and task 2 will be roughly about 2,000 words. However, on the OCR website, it says that if you go slightly above, you won't necessarily be penalized, but it will not be good, because you will either not be using the correct amount of AOs correctly, or you will not be writing in a concise manner. So you won't get they won't necessarily say, oh, this is too long, no marks, but it won't be good. And I know that because I've had to cut out hundreds and hundreds of words for my coursework because I'm not concise, but I managed. And that is it. I'm actually a bit really disappointed that this wasn't too good or concise, but I hope this was helpful. I hope this was gave you. I hope you know pretty much. I know, like I hope this made you pretty much understand the whole specification. This was very I put a lot of research into this, so I hope like this is helpful. And but again, if you like need like any more information, just ask your teachers or go on the OCR website. I'll put a link for the specification, the OCR A-level specification down below. And yeah, I'll be uploading a lot more English literature videos for OCR and for A-level in general, and GCSE maybe because I posted some already, but alright. In the near future, so please keep an eye out for those. But yeah, I hope that this has been helpful, and yeah, thank you for watching.